We voted to restructure executive leadership. Your position has been eliminated, effective immediately. All access credentials have been deactivated. No warning, no meeting, just a corporate execution via email on a Tuesday morning. The we that Marcus referred to was him, his new wife Victoria, and the 2 board members he'd appointed last quarter, college friends with 0 film experience, but impressive investment portfolios. My name is Ethan Reeves. I'm 46 years old, and until 3 months ago, I was the co-founder and creative director of Horizon Films, one of the most successful independent production studios in Los Angeles. I was sitting in my home office when the email arrived from my business partner of 15 years. I stared at the screen for a full minute before noticing the attachment, a severance agreement offering 3 months' pay in exchange for signing away my rights to contest the decision or claim any ownership in our upcoming projects. What Marcus didn't realize was that I'd been expecting something like this ever since he married Victoria Hamilton, the daughter of entertainment mogul James Hamilton. The whispered comments when they thought I couldn't hear. The meeting scheduled when I was on location. The gradual isolation from our investors. I closed my laptop without responding and walked to the window of my Hollywood Hills home, the one with the view of the city that had featured in 3 different magazine spreads about visionaries transforming the entertainment landscape. Marcus and I had posed for those photos together, glasses of scotch in hand, laughing about our unlikely success story. 15 years of friendship and partnership ended with a 109-word email. I picked up my phone to call him, then set it down. What would I even say? That I felt betrayed. That I knew he was pushing me out to impress his father-in-law with his decisive leadership. That the $200 million project we were about to begin production on, our studio's most ambitious ever, had been my vision from the start. Instead, I poured myself that same scotch from the photo shoots and contemplated what Marcus didn't know. He didn't know about the contract clause I'd insisted on when we reorganized 3 years ago. He didn't know about the quiet conversations I'd been having with our lead investors. And most importantly, he didn't know that I'd seen this coming long enough ago to prepare. I met Marcus Bennett during my 2nd year teaching film at UCLA. He was a guest speaker in my advanced production class, a rising executive producer with a reputation for turning mid-budget films into surprising box office successes. After class, we talked for hours about the state of independent cinema and the opportunities created by streaming platforms. 2 months later, we formed Horizon Films. The partnership worked because we complemented each other perfectly. I had the creative vision, the relationships with directors and writers, the ability to spot transformative talent. Marcus had business acumen, investor connections, and a gift for navigating studio politics. Together, we built something remarkable, an independent studio that maintained creative integrity while actually making money. For 12 years, we were inseparable. We celebrated each other's marriages, and my subsequent divorce stood as godparents to each other's children, vacationed together in the brief windows between productions. The press called us Hollywood's most successful bromance. Then Marcus met Victoria at the Cannes Film Festival. The attraction was immediate and intense. Within 6 months, they were engaged. Within a year, married, and everything at Horizon began to shift. Victoria had opinions about everything. Our film slate, our office space, our company culture. Suggestions became expectations. Questions became criticisms. And Marcus, besotted with his new wife and the Hamilton family connections she brought, began to change. "We need to think bigger, Ethan," he'd say during meetings, echoing Victoria's exact words from dinner conversations the night before. "James thinks we're playing it too safe." James, always James. Victoria's father had become the invisible third partner in our conversations, his approval the new currency of our friendship. I tried to adapt, pitched bigger projects, explored franchise opportunities, sat through meetings with Hamilton media executives who talked about synergy and vertical integration while eyeing our independent studio like a tasty acquisition target. But it wasn't enough. I could feel myself being gradually sidelined. My creative decisions questioned, my access to investors limited, My relationship with Marcus reduced to formal meetings rather than the late-night brainstorming sessions that had built our company. 3 months ago, I noticed my name had been removed from the investor presentation for Afterlight, our $200 million sci-fi project that had taken me 4 years to develop. When I asked Marcus about it, he dismissed it as a formatting issue. But we both knew it was more. That's when I started making my own preparations. After receiving Marcus's termination email, I gave myself 24 hours before responding. No emotional reaction, no desperate plea, just strategic patience. The next morning, I sent a 3-word reply. Consult Section 17.3. Section 17.3 of our restructured operating agreement. The clause I had insisted on stated that removal of any founding partner required unanimous board approval plus a supermajority vote of major investors. Neither had occurred. Marcus called within minutes. "Let's not make this difficult, Ethan," he said, his voice carefully controlled. "The severance is generous, 3 months to figure out your next move." "The agreement isn't valid, Marcus. You know that. The board has made its decision. Fighting this will just drain your resources and reputation." "Who voted?" I asked. "You, Victoria, and your college buddies who've never produced anything more complicated than a wedding video." Silence. "Then you're making this personal." "No, you made it personal when you tried to erase 15 years of partnership with a form email." "Victoria thinks—" "I don't care what Victoria thinks," I interrupted. "I care what our investors think." "Have you told them yet that you're pushing out the creative director just as we're starting production on our biggest project ever?" More silence. "I didn't think so," I continued. "I'll be in the office tomorrow morning. We can discuss transition plans then." "Your access has been revoked." "Yes, I read that part. I'll call security from the lobby. Let them deny me entry to the company I co-founded. That should make for interesting industry news." I hung up before he could respond and immediately called Patricia Winters, our longtime entertainment attorney. I explained the situation, forwarded Marcus's email and the severance agreement. "This is amateur hour," Patricia said after reviewing everything. "They can't simply vote you out without investor approval. They know that. Marcus knows. Victoria's driving this and she doesn't understand our structure." "What do you want to do?" "I want to protect what I built," I replied. "And I want them to understand what they're throwing away." By evening, Patricia had drafted a formal response, rejecting the termination and requesting an emergency board meeting with investor representation. She also prepared a litigation strategy if things escalated. But I had another strategy in mind, one that wouldn't require courtrooms or legal fees. The next morning, I arrived at Horizon Films' offices in Century City precisely at 9 a.m. As expected, my key card didn't work. I called the front desk from the lobby. "Good morning, Julia. It's Ethan. Seems my access card isn't working." "Oh, Mr. Reeves." Her voice faltered. "Let me call upstairs." While waiting, I noticed several employees entering, their expressions changing from surprise to discomfort upon seeing me. Everyone knew something was happening, but no one knew exactly what. After 10 minutes, Marcus appeared in the lobby, Victoria a step behind him. "Let's not create a scene," he said quietly, gesturing toward a small conference room off the main entrance. "I'm just here to work, Marcus." Victoria stepped forward. "The decision has been made, Ethan. We're moving in a different creative direction." I smiled politely. "And you are involved in operational decisions now, Victoria. I must have missed that board vote as well." Her eyes narrowed, but before she could respond, Marcus intervened. 10 minutes. Private conversation. He motioned toward the conference room again. Once inside, he dropped the corporate facade. "What are you doing, Ethan? This isn't how professionals handle transitions. Sending termination emails isn't how partners of 15 years handle transitions either." Marcus ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair, a tell from our poker nights that he was uncomfortable. "The company needs to evolve. Victoria's father has connections that could take Horizon to the next level, but he needs assurances about leadership. So I'm being sacrificed to impress your father-in-law. You're being compensated fairly for your contributions while we move toward a more corporate structure. I leaned forward. Here's what's going to happen, Marcus. You're going to reinstate my access, acknowledge that proper procedures weren't followed, and we're going to work out a legitimate transition plan that doesn't involve you stealing the company we built together. And if I don't, then at 11 a.m., I'll be on a Zoom call with Elliot Chen, Richard Mercer, and Sophia Diaz. He paled slightly. Chen, Mercer, and Diaz represented our largest outside investors. They're aware of the situation, I continued, and they have questions about how this affects Afterlight. You know the $200 million project where I'm listed as executive producer in all the contracts. Marcus's jaw tightened. You wouldn't sabotage the project out of spite. I don't need to sabotage anything. I just need to tell the truth, that I was removed without proper authority just as production was about to begin. That the person who developed the project for 4 years won't be involved in its execution. That personal relationships are driving business decisions. Victoria, who had been listening at the door, burst in. This is blackmail. This is business, I corrected. Something your husband understood before Hamilton Media became his North Star. The standoff lasted through the morning. Marcus and Victoria consulted with their attorneys while I sat calmly in the conference room, occasionally waving to confused employees through the glass walls. At 10:55, 5 minutes before my scheduled investor call, Marcus returned. We can discuss a transition plan, he conceded. Reinstate your access temporarily while we work out details. And my role on Afterlight, his expression hardened. Executive producer credit remains. Creative oversight shifts to the new team. I stood up. That's not good enough, Marcus. It's the best offer you're going to get. Then I need to take this call. I reached for my phone. Wait. His voice had lost its executive authority. What do you want? Full creative control of Afterlight as contracted. A proper buyout of my ownership stake, not 3 months severance, and a public statement acknowledging my contributions to Horizon. Victoria won't accept. Victoria isn't a board member or an investor. You need to decide what matters more, Marcus, your partnership with me or your marriage to Hamilton Media. He left without answering, and I made my call as scheduled. I explained the situation candidly to our investors, emphasizing my commitment to Afterlight while expressing concerns about leadership changes during such a critical phase. Their reactions ranged from alarm to outrage. Elliot Chen, our most significant investor, was particularly direct. Fix this or funding gets complicated. By evening, Marcus had capitulated to most of my terms. I would maintain creative control of Afterlight as contracted. My ownership stake would be purchased at a fair market valuation. A press release would announce my decision to pursue new creative opportunities after completing my work on our current projects. What he didn't know was that I had no intention of making it easy for them. Over the next 6 weeks, I came to the office daily, attended every meeting, reviewed every decision. I was unfailingly professional, rigorously prepared, and absolutely inflexible on creative matters. When Victoria suggested casting changes to appeal to her father's distribution channels, I politely referenced contractual obligations to our existing cast. When Marcus tried to reduce the practical effects budget in favor of cheaper CGI, I presented exhaustive research on audience preference for practical effects in successful science fiction films. When their new creative consultants, friends of the Hamilton family, proposed script changes, I arranged readings that demonstrated how the revisions undermined the project's core appeal. Each decision became a small battle in a larger war, one where I had the advantage of actually understanding filmmaking while they played corporate politics. Meanwhile, I was having separate conversations with our key creative personnel: the director, the cinematographer, the production designer, the lead actors, all people I had brought to the project, all concerned about the changes they were sensing. Just focus on making something extraordinary. I advised them all. I'll handle the politics. 2 months into this arrangement, cracks began to show. Victoria stopped attending meetings after a particularly humiliating exchange where her lack of film knowledge became painfully apparent to everyone present. The creative consultants submitted fewer and fewer notes. Marcus began deferring to my judgment again, if only to keep the project moving forward. But the real breaking point came during pre-production in New Zealand. I was on location working with the production team while Marcus remained in Los Angeles, increasingly occupied with Hamilton media business. Critical decisions needed immediate attention, and the time difference meant Marcus was unavailable during key working hours. One evening, I received an urgent call from our production manager. "We've got a problem with the location permit for the mountain sequence. Governments raised environmental concerns. We need an executive decision on whether to relocate or fight it." "What's your recommendation?" I asked. "Fighting means delays we can't afford. Relocating means redesigning several key sequences. Cost differential? About $2 million to relocate, but potentially more if we fight and still lose." I made the call to relocate and redesign. The right decision for the film, though not the one Marcus would have made. He would have fought, wanting to preserve the exact vision sold to investors, regardless of practical realities. The next morning, when Marcus learned what had happened, he was furious. "You didn't have authority to make that call," he said during our video conference. "Someone needed to make it, and you weren't available. You should have waited." And lost a day of production at a cost of $300,000? That didn't seem prudent. He had no response, because he knew I was right. And in that moment, something shifted. He realized that despite pushing me out of the company leadership, he still needed me for this project. Not just my creative input, but my ability to solve problems, manage personalities, and make difficult decisions under pressure. 3 days later, Marcus called again, his tone markedly different. "We've hit some issues with Hamilton Media," he began without preamble. "What kind of issues?" "They're suggesting significant changes to our distribution strategy for Afterlight. More limited theatrical release, faster streaming availability." "That wasn't our plan," I noted. "The budget was built around a traditional release window." "I know," he sounded exhausted. "James thinks the theatrical market is too unpredictable." "The Hamilton influence you were so excited about," I observed. Silence. "Then, can you talk to Elliot Chen? He respects you. If the original investors push back against these changes, it gives me leverage with James." The irony wasn't lost on me. Marcus had pushed me out to impress his father-in-law, and now he needed me to protect him from that same influence. "I'll think about it," I said, and ended the call. I didn't call Elliot immediately. Instead, I let Marcus stew for 48 hours while I focused on the actual filmmaking happening around me. The incredible sets being built, the performances being crafted, the visual language taking shape. This was why I had gotten into film, not for corporate maneuvering, but for the collaborative creation of something meaningful. On the third day, Marcus called again. "Have you spoken with Elliot?" "Not yet." "Ethan, this is serious. James is talking about pulling Hamilton Media's marketing commitment. If we don't adjust the release strategy, that would violate our agreement with the investors." "I know that," he snapped. "That's why I need your help." I let the silence stretch, remembering all the times in recent months when my input hadn't been needed or wanted. "Ethan, I'll call Elliot," I finally said. "But I need something from you first." "What?" "The truth about why you really pushed me out." Another long silence. "Victoria thought you had too much influence over the creative direction. She convinced her father that Horizon would be a better acquisition target, with more malleable leadership." "Acquisition? You're selling our company?" "Not immediately, but eventually it made strategic sense to position for that possibility." "And our independence? Our mission to make films other studios wouldn't touch? Was that all just talk?" "The industry is changing, Ethan. Independent studios can't compete without corporate backing. We were competing just fine. For how long? Be realistic." I looked out the window at the massive set taking shape, a vision that had begun in my imagination and was now becoming reality through the efforts of hundreds of talented people. "I'll call Elliot," I said. "But not to help you navigate Hamilton politics. To protect this film and the people making it." I spoke with Elliot Chen that evening, giving him a candid assessment of the situation. His response was immediate and unequivocal. Any deviation from the agreed distribution strategy would trigger a clause requiring accelerated repayment of the investment funds. "I invested in Horizon because you and Marcus built something special," Elliot said, "not to become a cog in Hamilton Media's machine." The following week, a trade publication broke the news that Hamilton Media was pausing its expansion plans in the production sector to focus on core distribution strengths, corporate speak for James Hamilton, backing away from acquiring Horizon Films. 2 days later, Marcus appeared in New Zealand, looking haggard and humbled. "Can we talk?" he asked, finding me on set during a break in filming. We walked to a quiet area overlooking the stunning landscape that would soon be transformed through our cameras into an alien world. "Victoria and I are separating," he said without preamble. I said nothing, waiting for him to continue. "The Hamilton acquisition plan fell apart. James blames me for mismanaging the investor relationships. Victoria sides with her father, of course." He gave a hollow laugh. "Turns out I sacrificed our partnership for nothing." "I'm sorry about your marriage," I said, and meant it despite everything. "The board has asked me to offer you full reinstatement. Executive leadership, creative control, everything you had before. More, actually, since they're nervous about investor confidence." I looked out at the mountains, thinking about the journey that had brought us here, not just to this location, but to this moment of truth between former friends. "I don't want reinstatement," I said finally. Marcus looked genuinely surprised. "What do you want then?" "What I've always wanted, to make extraordinary films with people I trust. And am I still one of those people?" I turned to face him directly. "That depends. Which Marcus am I talking to? My original partner who believed in creative vision, or the corporate player who discarded 15 years of friendship for Hamilton connections?" He winced. "I deserve that." "Yes, you do. But Afterlight doesn't. The cast and crew don't. They deserve our best selves, whatever has happened between us." Over the next 6 months, Marcus and I found a new equilibrium, not the easy friendship of our early years, but a functional partnership based on clearer boundaries and explicit agreements. The board was restructured to include investor representatives. Victoria's friends were quietly removed from creative roles. The Hamilton influence receded as their marriage officially ended. Afterlight wrapped production on time and under budget. Early test screenings suggested we had created something special, a film that honored its ambitious vision while remaining accessible to audiences. One evening, as we reviewed the final cut in a Los Angeles editing bay, Marcus turned to me. "I almost destroyed everything," he said quietly. "The company, the film, our partnership. All for what?" "For the illusion of something bigger," I replied. "But we were already building something significant." 6 months after that conversation, Afterlight premiered to critical acclaim and commercial success, eventually grossing over $500 million worldwide against its $200 million budget. Horizon Films remained independent, though with a more transparent governance structure and clearer protections for its founding principles. Marcus and I never fully recovered the friendship we once had. Some betrayals leave permanent scars. But we found a new kind of partnership, one based not on blind trust, but on mutual respect for what each of us brings to the creative process. I could have destroyed him when he was vulnerable, could have taken control of the company, pushed him out as he had tried to do to me. But that kind of revenge would have damaged the very thing I was fighting to protect, our shared vision of what filmmaking could be. Sometimes the most powerful response to betrayal isn't destruction but reconstruction. Building something stronger from the broken pieces, even if the cracks always remain visible. As for me, I moved out of my Hollywood Hills home into a beachside property in Malibu. Less impressive for magazine spreads, perhaps, but with a view that reminds me daily of what matters most: perspective, the ability to see beyond immediate conflicts to the larger picture. the skill that makes both good filmmakers and survivors of betrayal. My phone still rings with calls from Marcus, but now they're about actual creative decisions, not corporate maneuvering. We're developing new projects, telling new stories, building on what we salvaged rather than dwelling on what we lost. In Hollywood, where relationships are currency and loyalty is often an illusion, that's its own kind of happy ending.